In 2035, Europe was still regarded as a symbol of culture, art, and history. The historical squares in the cities, buildings preserved for many years, museums, and universities reminded everyone of the continent's rich past. For those who came to visit, Europe was still the center of beauty, order, and calm. However, behind this beauty, another reality was slowly taking shape. Streets were becoming cleaner, yet quieter. Cafes were full of people, but most of those sitting at the tables belonged to the older generation. A significant part of shops, ports, and even the energy system was no longer in the hands of local residents, but controlled by foreign companies. This continent was gradually turning not into a center of power, but increasingly into an administratively managed system from both an economic and political perspective. In 2008, the picture was completely different. At that time, Europe and the United States were almost equal in economic balance. Europe viewed its social system as proof of stability and justice and was proud of its high standard of living. However, in the following years, their paths diverged. The United States began investing in new technologies, taking bigger risks, and relying on deep capital markets, accelerating its growth even more. Europe, meanwhile, acted cautiously and often postponed change. Over time, the gap widened and eventually reached a scale comparable to the entire Japanese economy. This difference was not accidental. It was the result of years of decisions and delayed reforms. At the center of this transformation was industry. For many years, Germany had been considered the engine of Europe. Mechanical engineering, the chemical industry, automobile production. Altogether, they formed the economic backbone of the continent. The system progressed quite logically. The United States provided the security framework, China provided the large market, and Russia supplied cheap energy. But when energy supplies weakened, all this stability collapsed. Factory costs increased, and some companies moved production to other regions. The closure of nuclear power plants led to a return to coal, which sparked debates. The economy was still functioning, but confidence in its own strength had weakened. Decisions about the future of industry were made with more hesitation and with an inclination to avoid risk. Demographic processes made this picture even more complicated. In Italy, Spain, Germany, and other countries, birth rates began to fall well below replacement levels. The duration of education for young people increased, unemployment grew, and the number of marriages declined. Some moved to other countries in search of a higher standard of living. This change was not reflected only in statistics. The economic dynamic itself was weakening, while pension and social costs were rising. A social system that once seemed strong and stable was now becoming a burden. Historical facts show that in such situations, societies usually do not collapse suddenly. First, they simply start losing speed. In the field of innovation, Europe was experiencing a strange dead end. Universities trained world-class scientists, and research centers produced new ideas. However, turning these ideas into major companies proved difficult. Fragmented markets, complicated permit processes, and capital that avoided risk created obstacles for startups to grow. As a result, many ideas either remained stuck in their home countries or were bought by American companies and developed there. Europe was still a center of creativity, but a significant part of the value was realized elsewhere. In the digital age, scale meant everything, and an idea without scale could use only a very small part of its potential. The movement of capital completed this picture. Money always flows toward the more stable and profitable direction. Many companies chose New York for development, and investment funds turned toward U.S. markets. Capital inside Europe decreased, economic growth slowed, and slower growth led to even more capital outflow. Thus, a self-reinforcing cycle emerged, and the continent was becoming increasingly dependent on others in terms of capital. Energy policy was trying to teach another lesson. Europe was ambitious in climate goals, and this was considered the right step for future generations. However, The strategy relied on the assumption that geopolitics would remain stable. When this assumption collapsed, costs rose rapidly, industrial facilities faced difficulties, and families had to pay more for heating and electricity. The lesson here was very simple. Energy systems must first be resilient and based on diverse sources, and only then should idealistic goals be built on top of them. In the end, the period known as the peace dividend gradually came to an end. For many years, Europe tried to expand social welfare by reducing defense spending. But as the international environment changed, military expenditures began to rise again. Now budgets had to cover both the demands of the welfare state and the growing security costs. Maintaining stability was becoming more difficult, and political discussions were becoming increasingly tense. History has seen many similar moments, and very few societies have managed to preserve this balance without pain. By the mid-2030s, Europe had reached a clear crossroads. One path required reform, renewal, and deeper integration. The gradual restoration of energy independence, support policies for families, real opportunities for youth, the deepening of capital markets, and greater unity among the 27 countries. The other path led to preserving what already existed, avoiding risk, but in exchange gradually accepting decline. This choice was not only economic, but also cultural and historical. History does not speak through emotions, it speaks through results. Europe is still one of the leading centers of science, art, education, and great ideas. But the last decade revealed one truth. Greatness is not given as inheritance and is not preserved automatically. To protect it, foresight, discipline, correctly assessing risks, and making difficult decisions on time are necessary. No civilization can build its future relying only on its past. As always, the future is shaped by the direction chosen today. And for Europe, these choices are already starting to turn into history. Thank you for watching us. If this topic was interesting to you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications. In the upcoming videos on this channel, we will take a deeper look at history, economics, and the major processes shaping the world. Your opinions are important to us as well. Share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, those who understand the past build the future more correctly.